Hi everyone. My name is Del Spoonmore, and I'm from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. I've lived there my whole life. This is my wife and our 4 kids here. And I want to talk a lot about gardening. I want to talk a little bit about what even got us into gardening and where we started here. So this was me with my oldest daughter whenever she was born. I was 340 pounds, and I really did not care about my health at all. I guess is the fairest thing to say. I had mostly a McDonald's diet, whatever fast food place was closest at the time. So I had my gallbladder taken out at 22. I had a lot of anxiety and depression issues at the time, although I didn't even know it. I didn't know that's what it was called. I just knew that every now and then my body revolted against me and I would start shaking and crying and I couldn't control it. It was just part of my life. And so that was kind of where I was back then. And I committed myself to losing weight, and I lost 120 pounds in 9 months, and I ran a marathon, and I went on the Rachel Ray show, and I did all this stuff, and it led me down a bad path. I let the ego take control of me, and I got caught up in all of this, and I forgot why I even started doing this to begin with. I started this because I wanted to be there for my kids, right? I wanted to be able to be a soccer coach and do all the stuff I do now, and I knew I wouldn't be able to do that where I was then, but I got too deep into this, and I was doing that all the time. I was running, I was riding my bike, I was always away from home. And it led to some bad things. And I went through this rough period, about 1.5 years, and thank God he sent me her. And she changed my life. So she's a nurse, and she was the first person in my life that even made me realize I had an issue with anxiety and depression. Before then, I didn't know what all it was called. I just knew I was a little different. And she was the first person in my life that opened my eyes to what it was I was actually experiencing, and that led me to this book. So this book talks about how to help anxiety and depression, and the answers were very simple. Drink a lot of water, eat the right foods, get some exercise, sleep consistently, maintain proper sleep schedules. Mindfulness is a huge one. I let my mind go to the past or to the future, keeping it right here on the moment and not worrying about things I can't control. Getting enough sunlight, enough social activity. So all of that pointed me towards a garden. Because I started buying food, and it was really expensive. And we were juicing, and it was $100 a week in vegetables. I was like, man, this is like 3 months of McDonald's, So anyway, that's where the story begins, and this is what we ended up doing. So over the course of 2 years, we converted our backyard from that to this, and this is the story of that. So since it's a story, I had to do this. So starting out with 2015, a new growth. So we started with square foot gardening. And if you're not familiar with that, it's pretty simple. You build a box, you fill it with 1/3 peat moss, 1/3 vermiculite, and 1/3 compost. And you follow these little guides as far as how many go per square. I really liked it because I'm a software engineer by trade, and it kind of just matched my thinking. And anyway, we started doing that. So these were our first 2 beds. We grew a couple of each thing, kind of just trying different things, learning as we went. So watering here. And this is our backyard at the end of year 1. So we made a lot of mistakes along the way, though. Oh, I mean, sorry. Compost. So compost is a big deal around here to us, because I don't like buying compost either. Because it's the idea of buying, old cow poop, which just seems silly. So we started making our own compost bins. I don't get this dirty anymore when I unload. That was my first try. Notice how clean she is. You can see who did the work. She took the credit. She was pretty excited the first time they dumped the huge load of compost in the back. She thought it was pretty cool. So this was our first compost bins, and we left the first year kind of, here. And here's where I want to talk about some of the mistakes I made. These are peas interplanted with carrots in a checkered pattern. Because I followed the square foot gardening book and said I better plant carrots with peas. But I didn't realize peas, I didn't know how to grow peas. I just threw them in there. And then trellising this was a nightmare. So these were a lot of mistakes I made the first year. And the second year was really geared towards fixing those mistakes and trying to do things more efficiently. So, the next stage, 2016. It's a war against Bermuda grass. You guys know. So this is when Mary was born. My 3rd daughter, Mary, was born, and she's an eater. And within minutes of being born, we were like, uh-oh, we got to start building more gardens. So we got to work, me and my helpers here, and we started building more gardens. But you can see in the back, see that Bermuda? Oh, yeah. That was my nemesis all year last year, or the first year. So we wanted to solve that problem, so we turned to cardboard, and we started covering our entire backyard with cardboard and wood chips. And every week I would go get 1 or 2 loads a week, and that was my exercise for the week, just unloading wood chips and dumping them on the ground. And I actually enjoy doing this. Like, I look forward to doing this. I know it sounds crazy, but I spend all day staring at a computer generally, so being able to go do this, that's how I work now. I spend some time at the computer, and then I go do that for a bit, I alternate. I work from home, so it's what keeps me from going too crazy. So we started filling out this way, and I didn't really fully explain to my wife what the idea was at the time. I just kind of started creeping this way, and I hope she wouldn't notice because she didn't really know very often. So I kept going, and you can see I just kept kind of, and then that happened. That was a bad day. I just had to go out in the garden for a while. And there's a reason for this too, because one thing I realized when I started is I did not know how the sun worked, because this was happening. And from October to February, I was like, uh-oh, all of these are not getting sun anymore. So I started building out that way. And you can also see these raised beds that are on legs here. I started building those. That was a mistake. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But the idea was to get sun back on the plants, because that's important from what I learned. And so we kept going that way. Here's those raised beds on legs. The problem with these is that there's a lot of cold air and hot air that gets underneath of them, so they're very temperamental. They work well in the areas that are shaded in the afternoon. So I have them all on the east side of my house or on the east side of the fence now. But here, that wasn't a good idea. But I learned. So we kept going, and then this happened. This is my grandpa, and he pretty much helped raise me, and he passed away. And I had about a month before he passed that I knew it was going to happen. And I knew that I had a friend that passed the year before, and I went to his funeral, and I hated the fact that the person that did his funeral didn't even know him. And it made me mad. And with him, I wasn't going to let that happen. So I hadn't done much speaking at that time, and I was really nervous about it, but I kind of just gave that whole 2 weeks that everything was happening and built these 3 gardens and let him talk to me. So these 3 gardens here and that one back there, that's what I did for a whole week. I just went out and shoveled dirt and let him talk to me. So that was the first time that I really felt the therapeutic effects of gardening. I knew I had felt it, but this was the first time I had to get in the garden. I was going to go crazy if I didn't go out there. And then I started to really get, hooked into that side of it. And it really started to change my life because, not only did this food taste better, like tasting spinach out of the garden was like, oh my gosh, this stuff tastes good. Like, where has this been my whole life? But with that taste comes all the added benefits and nutrition, the things that keep you feeling right mentally too. And I looked up, and it had been a year since I'd had a panic attack, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, I think I've figured it out, at least a little bit. And that's kind of where the spark started to be lit of realizing that I'm on a huge idea here, and there's a whole wave of people that are just like me. They're coming up behind me. They're worse than I am, meaning staring at screens all day long, stressed out because of it. You guys see it. You know more just as well as I do. And I felt like I had an opportunity to make a difference in the world by helping people find it. So that's kind of what started that idea. And then we were having a lot of success at the time too. So we were getting a lot of food out of the garden, the kids were having a lot of fun. It was just starting to be a lot of fun. And I started innovating because at the scale I had reached, it took me too long to water, and I don't like doing things inefficiently, it just drives me crazy. So I built these irrigation grids. They're just PVC pipe with holes drilled every 3 inches. And I hook it up to the main water line that's just building it there. But it's just right there. There's a hose connects to it. And right now I have an Orbit 4-way timer that controls all of this. I'm in the process of building a computer that does it all based on how much it's raining. It's a long story. That's where I'm going. This is what I got now. You can see that water comes out here. I can set it to run as long as I want. I change it depending upon the seasons. And this is how I do watering now. The problems with this, I can only water 1 bed at a time. It's not super efficient. And to hook a computer up to it, I have to buy a sensor for each bed, and my wife told me I can't spend that much money. So I've got to get it down to where I can water them all in 1 or 2 zones. So I think by switching to the drip tubing, the black drip tubing, much more efficient. I've started to switch to that. I've got to find a way to convince her. I should have done that for Christmas present. Wasting my opportunity. So here's the hose connector. People ask about this a lot, how they connect. It's simple, this is like $1.50 part of Home Depot right there. That's all you got to do to hook it up to it. I built a rainwater collection system because Square Foot Gardening says the water needs to be the same temperature as the air, and I really bought into that hard in the beginning. Once I had to water everything, I kind of backed off on that. I still try and use rainwater as much as I can, especially if I have a sick plant and I'm nursing it back, and I maybe put some fish fertilizer in there and I give it some of that water. That's how I try and use this, but really it was just because I thought it was cool and I wanted to do it. I want to explain this a little bit. because this is what keeps the water from being quite so dirty, because people often worry about, what about all the stuff on this roof up here, right? Well, this stuff gathers, and it's generally in the first flush of rain. So when it first starts raining, all that stuff flushes into here, and it builds up into here. And there's a bottle sitting in this tube right here that floats to the top and seals off once this fills up. And there's holes down here, so this drains slowly. But the idea is once this fills up, then the water's diverted, and this water should be a lot cleaner than the first water. I also have a pantyhose filter right here to filter, but I'm not drinking this water. This is just for gardening and really just a, yeah. So then another thing that I learned the first year was that I had everything in full sun, and that was a problem because it gets really hot here, and plants don't necessarily like that always. So I kind of thought the more sun the better, right? When I first started gardening, like these books, like Square Foot Gardening is written by a northerner. So take all the sun you can get. He's not from here, so that does not work here for some plants. So I started building gardens on the east side of everything I own, and building new things, like building shade walls, just trying to create shade, essentially. I started doing that. I started building more gardens, but again, I was getting in trouble for buying too much stuff. So I collected a bunch of pallets, and then my Uncle Noah and I spent the day with 2 sawzalls and some music and was tearing apart pallets. That was fun, though. And then we rebuilt our compost bin, because I didn't like how the first one had a fixed height on the bottom. It was a pain to move things back and forth, so this has slabs I can move things around. But also we started using this wood to build more garden beds. So I pretty much filled up the entire rest of my backyard. I should have pictures of it, but I'm not sure. And then another thing I started doing, I wanted to grow in the winter, because up until then we had only really eaten in the spring and fall and summer, but in the winter we didn't have as much food. And spinach and kale will do fine here if you cover it. So I started building these, and this was an idea I got from the 1 Yard Revolution channel on YouTube, which is one of my favorites. And it's basically just a 2x4 frame with PVC pipe that's fastened. You can see how it works here. This PVC pipe is just fastened into here with screws, and then this is just all. I've got a guide on my website that details how to build this, and it's super simple to build. And then this is on hinges, so now in order to harvest, before I had to like undo clips and all this stuff, and now it's as simple as just raising that lid and harvesting. So we started building these, and the cool thing about these too is you can switch out the covering. So this is like the black, or the plastic, the clear plastic, that you can't really do once it gets too hot, because it'll, temperatures will build up. But I can switch to these. So this is insect netting. And then you can also combine it. So I can do a layer of insect netting and that, over top of each other. And then I've got 2 layers of protection. And what this lets me start doing is doing things like we'll plant spinach and kale in January instead of waiting until February. And I can extend my seasons in both directions. And I can have food year round, essentially. Not everything, but the things that will survive the winter here, we'll do a much better job of it with these. So we started building those. That was another way we innovated. And then another thing we wanted to start doing was growing more of our own seeds, because I was spending a lot of money on plants and whatnot, and I wanted to start trying varieties that weren't just at the nursery. I wanted to start trying heirlooms and whatnot. So we built this to start growing seeds. And then at the end of the year, Junior was born. So this is my fourth child, my son. And he was born, and this was the end, so he was born in November of 2016, and that was the month of the election. And I know the election, that word just scared people. I'm not going political, I promise. I was not on either team. I didn't like the direction the country was going, from just the divisiveness of all of it. And I was waiting in line to vote, and I was so overwhelmed with frustration and the thought of, I have 4 kids that are growing up in this world, and no matter who won, I was going to feel that way, just to clarify. And I felt like I was given, I don't know, I feel like I was called to do something. I felt in that moment, God told me, well then if you're so worried about it, why aren't you fixing it? And I was like, well, what do you want me to do? And a few minutes later, I got introduced to one of the directors of the Baptist Children's Home, which is back behind my house. And I've been wanting to help them grow food for a long time, because they have this huge field that they mow every Tuesday, and all the time I was thinking, man, they could be growing food here. And then I met someone else that wanted to grow food, and I felt like in that moment I was told, this is what you need to do. Help people do what you know how to do. So that day, I started building our website, and this is the third part of the story. So we launched our website in January, and it started as a place for us to just put information. So I started blogging about how we did all this stuff. I did a lot of YouTube videos, I still do. If I'm out in the garden and I run into a problem, I'll shoot a quick video that just says, here's what I found, here's what I'm dealing with, here's how I fixed it. Just real simple things. I do tours of the garden sometimes. I do a lot of kid stuff. Just things like that, just helping people learn how to grow food. And that's where we started. And then we also did these kids festivals. So we partnered with Markham's Nursery in Oklahoma City and then Prairie Wind Nursery. Bill Ferris is here right from his nursery as well. And we did these kids festivals where we had 7 or 8 activities set up for kids to come through and do things related to gardening. So a couple of my favorites that I want to talk about. One was worm races. So put 2 worms in the middle, first one out wins. But an activity that really taught them something that I really liked was called Smell Like a Butterfly. And the way it works is you put a tomato in the middle of a bunch of herbs, and then the kids have to close their eyes and find the tomato with their nose. So it teaches them how insects find plants, right? It teaches them to start thinking about things from that viewpoint. And we had a lot of fun doing these. We're going to continue to do these next year. The Oklahoma City Home and Garden Show in January and March, we're doing a version of these as well. This is what I'm really passionate about because it's so hard to talk adults into things or to get adults to try new things. But kids, you give them a pot and a seed and then tell them to start growing it, they are just hooked. They are just fascinated by it. They love it. So every kid that comes to one of these goes home with a plant and a seed that they can plant and start growing with. So we did this, and then in July, I started working on, so as I was building the garden, the whole time I was thinking, software can make this easier. Because I've been in software my whole life. I've lived on a computer my whole life. And as I'm doing things, and as I'm hauling books out to the garden and trying to remember things, I'm thinking software can make this easier. And I started building the idea for this app, forever ago, and then we actually started building it in July. So we started building this, and what this app does is choose from a list of vegetables. Right now we have a little over 40. We're still working on adding more. But once you choose what you want to grow, you can tap on it. And this is where I have to wait for the video to catch up. But once you tap on it, then you can see how to grow that vegetable. So you can see all the details. I wish I would have made this video shorter. Hurry up. Come on. There we go. So you can tap on it and you can see how to grow it, right? You can read about what you need to do, how to harvest it, how to cook it. If there's any blog posts on our website that talk about that or any videos, they'll be down here below. There's a companion plants tab at the top. Right there, you tap on it, and then it shows you what grows well next to that. And then you can tap on that plant to go into it. There's a pest tab that shows you what pests attack that plant. And then you can tap on the pest to learn about what to do to handle that pest. There's also a pest tab that has pictures of the larva and the adult for each one of these pests as well. So if you don't know what it's called, you just know what it looks like, you can tap on it. So this was our first attempt at putting out an app that helps people grow food. But I want to go a lot farther than this. This is kind of just the first run at it. What I'm working on now is doing things like telling people when they need to water based on how much it's rained to where they are. There's data out there, put out, a lot of it by the government for free, that this data is out there. Like I can pass in GPS coordinates and return back when the first freeze date will be for that place. Like I can do things like that, and I can use that to start helping people by being more interactive. So instead of them just going into the app to reading how to do things, they can choose what vegetables they want to grow, and then I can do things like have a calendar so they can see when they need to do anything for those vegetables. Or it'll send them notifications saying you need to go plant your spinach today. You need to go do this today. So I can start to do those type of things and really help people grow food. And the idea behind this was just taking all the stuff that we learned through building the gardens. And this isn't all just stuff that we came up with. I leaned on books and other sources heavily for this information. I pulled from about 20 different books, the Oklahoma Gardening channel on YouTube, the Master Gardener program that I took some classes. I pulled from all the different places that I've learned from and put it into this app. So that's where we are today, and where I'm wanting to go with this. I mentioned some of the features, but more than anything, I want to help people grow food, but I can't do that if people don't know the app exists. So I'm going to start doing things like this. The app is free. I'm counting on the fact that I'm hoping I can put out a free app, continue to keep it free, and then throughout the app there are links to do things like to buy seeds, or on the pest page there's a link for birds, there's a link to buy a fake owl. Like to buy the things that I've bought to solve problems. So if you run into a problem, you open the app, and if you think that will solve your problem, if you tap on that link and you buy it, I get a percentage of that. So you don't have to pay me anything. You just buy something that you need. I don't want you buying things you don't need. I don't want you to get the wrong idea, because people tell me I'm just going to use that link for everything. I mean, it's not. I want to help people solve problems, and then if I solve a problem for you, then I get paid for it, right? Then I get a percentage of it. So that's my goal with this. So if you want to support us in our mission of helping people grow food, one thing you can do, or a couple of things you can do to really help us out, download the app. But then also another thing you can really do to help us out is to leave a review in the the App Store, so either iOS or Android, or rate it. I mean, I know you see people asking for that kind of stuff all the time, but it really goes a long way towards helping people find out about the app. And that's where I am at. I'm trying to get people to learn about the app, because I want to build more too. I want to keep building things that help gardeners. That's kind of, I feel like that's my mission in life. I spent the first 30 years of my life learning about computers and spending way too much time on computers. And now I want to balance out the rest of it with good coming from that, right? So that is my story, and that's what I'm here to talk about.